Hey guys, welcome to the YouTube channel of Conscious History, where we will unveil the hidden truths of the past. In a world with narratives of crime, violence and adversity, it's essential to remember that every story has two sides. In this video we're diving deep into the history of the Crips, one of the most notorious and influential street gangs in the United States, represented by the color blue. The history of the Crips is not just about crime and violence. It's a narrative that involves social issues, community and change. If you like the content, like and subscribe to the channel and let's travel through time, revealing the rise, impact and transformation of a group that's been a central figure in urban history. Let's start with the basics first. Stanley Williams II was born on December 29, 1953 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His father abandoned the family when Williams was 1 year old. In 1959, Williams moved with his mother, Louisiana Williams, to Los Angeles, California, and settled in the city's South Central region. As Williams' mother worked several jobs to support them, Williams as a kid was a rascal and often engaged in mischief on the streets. As a child, he would make money from what he called the hustlers. These hustlers would bet on kids with just about anything, who could spit, urinate or throw a rock the farthest. As a child, Williams witnessed cockfights, cricket fights and pay-per-view street fights among people between 6 and 50 years of age. Older hustlers would bet on children to fight. This was the world Williams grew up in. As a young child, he was often paid a couple of dollars after dog fights to take care of the injured dogs. But after needing more money and seeing his mother struggle to feed her family, Williams made the choice to start to participate in street fighting. By the time Williams was a teenager, he had gained a reputation in South Central's West Side as a vicious street fighter. Williams was expelled from George Washington's preparatory high school and denied entry by several other high schools in the South Central area because he was so-called intimidating. Throughout his childhood, Williams gave himself quite a street reputation, and because of that, everyone started calling him by his middle name, Tookie. The other part of the beginning of our story starts with Raymond Lee Washington, born on August 14, 1953, the youngest of 4 sons. His parents separated when he was 2 years old and he was raised by his mother and stepfather. He grew up on East 76th Street, between Watford Avenue and Central Avenue in Los Angeles, South Central. In his childhood, Washington developed an affinity for fist fighting and was constantly in trouble with the Los Angeles Police Department for various offenses. Washington's mother would say the following about her child. Raymond was a good kid when he was a boy. Raymond didn't go out of his way to fight or to do anything bad, but if someone came to him, he would protect himself. He tries to protect our community and keep the bad guys out. People around the neighborhood saw Washington differently and described him as a muscular bully with core values. He wouldn't let anybody from outside our neighborhood bother us. He would bother us. Washington apparently was a good football player, but never participated as a member of a school sports team due to his poor grades. His behavior caused Washington to be repeatedly expelled from schools, resulting in frequent transfer going from school to school. In the late 1960s, juvenile crime increased in South Central as older gangs disbanded to join the Black Power movement, most notably as part of the Black Panther Party, initially to protect black people from police brutality and corruption from the Los Angeles Police Department. Increasingly violent youth gangs formed in their place, in which both main characters of this video participated in. Washington, a native of the East Side, joined a local street gang called the Avenues, led by another teenager named Craig Munson. At age 15, Washington beat up Munson's younger brother in a fist fight after discovering Munson had put up a gun against his older brother, Reggie Washington. After the fight, Washington and one of his other older brothers, Ronald Joe, confronted Munson and friends on the corner of Avalon Boulevard. According to former gang members who knew Washington at the time, he was subsequently beaten up by Craig Munson in retaliation for his younger brother's beating. and Washington left the avenues. In late 1969, Washington organized his own gang called the Baby Avenues, recruiting a group of other neighborhood youths in South Central. The Baby Avenues wanted to emulate a gang of older youths called the Avenue Boys, which had been active since 1964 on Central Avenue. Tookie Williams, however, on his side earned the respect of many gangsters on the west side. These gangs were mostly small-time neighborhood groups that operated independently from each other, and therefore leadership was not chosen but determined naturally. At age 15, Williams was invited into a small west side clique after he befriended a local teenager, Donald or Doc Sweetback Archie. Williams soon earned the clique's respect after beating up one of their members for insulting his mother. Williams became the unofficial leader of this clique as his violent reputation began to spread across South Central. In 1969, age 15, Tookie was arrested in Inglewood for car theft and was sent to juvenile hall. While doing time at the detention center, Tookie was introduced to Olympic weightlifting by the facility's gym coach, which would spark an interest in bodybuilding. By his release from custody in early 1971, aged 17, Tookie was physically bigger and stronger. Upon his release from custody, the review board asked him what he planned to do after being released, to which he replied, "Being the leader of the biggest gang in the world." When Tookie was released from prison in 1971, he was approached by Washington at George Washington Preparatory High School, after hearing of Tookie through a mutual friend of both young men. The friend informed Washington of Tookie's toughness and his willingness to fight members of larger, more established street gangs, such as the LA Crips and the Chain Gang. What struck Washington about meeting Tookie was that besides being incredibly muscular, he and his cohort were dressed similar to Washington and his clique, wearing leather jackets with starched Levi jeans and suspenders. Washington proposed to Tookie that they would form a confederation of the gangs under the influence in their respective areas, along with another teenage gang leader called Mac Thomas in Compton, to form a single large street gang. The students who attended George Washington High School wore blue as it was their school color. It is rumored for this reason that when they agreed to collaborate, they chose to wear the color to show their unity as a set, a slang word to describe the neighborhood gangs. This is how the Crip movement originated. Both Washington and Tookie came from harsh childhood backgrounds. Their plan to unify and make something out of their own and the community's lives gave hope to the people around them. It really stood for something positive to make a change. The term Crip stood for Community Revolution in Progress. To unify the community, unite them, start a revolution to better people's life, and to help get kids out of the poverty Tookie and Washington were raised in. Forming the Crips meant not eliminating other gangs, but to create a force powerful enough to protect local black people from racism, corruption, and brutality at the hands of the police. At the time of the Crip initial formation, there were only 3 Crip sets: Washington East Side Crips, later called the East Coast Crips, Tookie's West Side Crips, later the A-Tray Gangster Crips, and the Compton Crips, led by Mac Thomas. Washington, Tookie, and Thomas went on an aggressive and violent recruitment campaign throughout the black ghettos of Los Angeles, where they challenged the leaders of other gangs to one-on-one street fights. This process resulted in most gangs agreeing to join the Crips and were converted from small independent groups to sets within the larger gang. Because of this, the Crips quickly established themselves as the largest street gang in Los Angeles, with increasing numbers and territory as their influence spread across low-income black neighborhoods. The phrase, "more money, more problems," seemed suited for the future of the Crips at that time. The more people joined, the more rivalries arose with other gangs, which led to more criminal activities. With the rise of media coverage, which put these new violent gangs on the front page, soon many disaffected black youths were running to join the Crips. Many without ever being contacted by gang leaders. This caused the bad image of the Crips lifestyle until this day. Being a gangster Crip was affiliated to crime, murder, drive-by shootings and eventually death. The media did not see that the origin of being a Crip was meant about brotherhood, revolution and helping kids out of poverty. This against the rules image of the Crips that was portrayed by the media was like a volcano that erupted. It made it possible that young people chose a life of violence, not knowing that the Crips were initially established to live a life of violence. As for their leaders, Washington was murdered in a drive-by shooting on the corner of East 64th Street and South San Pedro Street in South Central Los Angeles. He was rushed to the hospital where he died while undergoing emergency surgery. No suspects have been arrested and Washington's murder remains largely a mystery. Meg Thomas was murdered under mysterious circumstances in the mid-1970s. At the funeral, all gang members wore a blue bandana. This blue bandana was first worn by Crips founding member Curtis "Buddha" Morrow, as part of his color-coordinated clothing of blue Levi's, a blue shirt and dark blue suspenders. The blue bandana was worn in tribute to Morrow when he was shot and killed, and later became a staple association with being a member of the Crips. As for Tookie Williams, he was wounded in a drive-by shooting while sitting on the porch of his house in Compton in 1976. Tookie was letting his dog out for a walk in the evening. Attempting to avoid to get hit, Tookie dove to the ground from the porch but was shot in both legs. Tookie was told by doctors that he would never walk again, but after a nearly year-long process of physical rehabilitation and an intense workout regimen, he ultimately regained his ability to walk. After the shooting, Tookie redeveloped a substance abuse problem when he began smoking PCP. Tookie's personal life began to unravel. His grandmother died, and because of his criminal record, he was denied the opportunity to compete in amateur bodybuilding contests. Eventually, his gangster lifestyle was beginning to take a mental toll on him. In 1981, Tookie was convicted of 4 counts of murder committed in 2 separate incidents. Williams always maintained his innocence, though subsequent court reviews concluded that there was no compelling reason to grant a retrial. Tookie was convicted in 1981 of all 4 murders. The jury also convicted him of robbery in both cases and found that he personally used a firearm in the commission of the crimes. The jury came to a verdict of guilty, and the judge sentenced him to death. In prison, he talked about the negative parts of gang life and activities, or so-called gangbanging. He renounced gangs and apologized for his role in co-founding the Crips. This because of the bad stigma surrounding the Crips and leading the youth into a life of crime. This was not the intention Tookie created the Crips. Tookie was still highly respected as a Crip. This is to show in the fact that he received a significant amount of money from outside sources while still being in jail. Unfortunately, rivalries also consist inside the prison walls, which resulted in Tookie being stabbed in the neck in San Quentin State Prison, which he survived. Tookie appealed his conviction in the state court and filed a petition in the federal court. Thousands of people were signing online petitions for clemency as well as a motion to obtain new evidence. In jail, Tookie was the only man in history to be nominated for a Nobel Prize while imprisoned. The nomination for the No Justice No Peace Prize was granted for him for his evolution from a gang member to a peace activist, warning children and teenagers about the dangers of gang life, something that could be seen as the reason why he started the Crip movement. In this period, the media, community organizations, and relatives of the victims were speaking out. People were on 2 sides whether or not Tookie should be on death row. Celebrities also joined to stop the execution, including Snoop Dogg and Jamie Foxx. Even other inmates were involved in the activism to save Tookie's life. Many people wanted Governor Schwarzenegger to commute Tuki's death sentence to life without parole for all the young people he saved from entering a life full of violence. On December 12, 2005, Governor Schwarzenegger denied clemency for Williams based on totality of circumstances. On December 13, 2005, 16 days away from his 52nd birthday, Williams was executed by lethal injection at the San Quentin State Prison. Hours before the execution, he stated, "I rely upon my fate. It has nothing to do with manhood or with some pseudo-former gang street code. This is pure fate and predicated on a redemption. So, therefore, I just stand strong and continue to tell you, your audience, and the world that I'm innocent. And yes, I have been a wretched person, but I've redeemed myself. And I say to you and all those who can listen and will listen that redemption is tailor-made for the wretched. And that's what I used to be. That's what I would like the world to remember me. That's how I would like my legacy to be remembered as. A redemptive transition. Something that I believe is not exclusive just for the so-called sanctimonious, the elitists. And it doesn't. It is not based on color or race or social stratum or one's religious background. It's accessible for everybody. That's the beauty of it." At Tuki's funeral, the last words echoed from a tape played to the people who attended the funeral. Here, he had asked to spread a message to loved ones. "The war within me is over. I battled my demons and I won. Teach them how to avoid our destructive footsteps. Teach them to strive for higher education. Teach them to promote peace, and teach them to focus on rebuilding the neighborhoods that you, others, and I helped to destroy." In this day and age, the heritage of Tuki's Crips is still present. From all the gang members, youth gangs, active Crips in prison, or Crips using the Crip emoji on WhatsApp or social media to describe the word Crip and giving each other support. The blue bandana is well associated worldwide with the Crip gang, and for some people being a Crip is part of their day-to-day life. That all started with the idea of Tuki and others to start a better life for their community. Let's hope that Tuki's thought process and mission to look for peace reaches many young people for the intention the Crips were raised, to get people out of violence and poverty. Did you know about the history of the Crips? Did you know of Tuki Williams and Raymond Lee Washington and their intention for their community revolution and progress movement? What did you think of Tuki's evolution from a gang member to a peace activist? Leave me your answers below in the comments, or comment with a Crip emoji if you like the content. And activate the notification bell to see more in-depth history videos. See you next time at Conscious History Maine.